Hey, in today's video, we are talking about your TSP, and will your TSP always be enough? I mean, you might have enough today, but what could happen over time that would cause your TSP to be enough today, but to have it not be enough later? That's what we're going to talk about today, coming up next. Hey, my name is Mel Stubbs. I'm here on behalf of Retirement Benefits Institute, talking to federal employees about their retirement system and better planning. If you like this type of information, please subscribe. You'll get a video like this every week. And you can also hit our website at retireinstitute.com, go to resources and videos, and you can see the list of every video we've done. And so if you have a question about specific aspects of federal retirement, go there and you can get some help. Now, today's video, we are talking about how do you know if you have enough? And we've done some videos on that before, but today the distinction is, how do we know it will always be enough? So we have a little rock here that has the word enough on it. And so we're always talking about what is enough? How do we know if it's enough to help somebody be able to retire? But the dilemma is it could be enough today, but certain things could happen that would cause it not to be enough later. And we need to know what those things are, and we need to have a plan to offset them so that they don't come true for you. Now, the first one is inflation. I believe they just put out the cost of living increases for Social Security, and great news is I think it's above 5%. It's like the highest they've had in a really long time, which on the surface sounds good, but the dilemma is the reason it's so high is because inflation is so high. Everything costs more. I've seen jokes on Facebook where somebody said, I don't mean to brag when I go somewhere expensive, but I just got gas. You know, that's pretty funny. So everything is costing more, and so that means if you have your retirement set up where you have a pension, you got Social Security, and then you have your assets, and you have a certain amount every year you're spending, when that certain amount every year starts going up and going up at a faster rate, it means you're going to have to take out larger withdrawals to pay for everything. Now, your pension does go up with cost of livings, but if you're a FERS employee, FERS retiree, you don't get the full cost of living increase. It's usually whatever the CPIW, the Consumer Price Index for wage earners, minus 1%. So it usually doesn't quite keep up with inflation. Social Security usually goes up a little bit more than your FERS pension, but it still a lot of times doesn't fully offset whatever inflation is. And then your TSP, for it to offset inflation, you've got to be earning some money. So inflation can cause you to take larger withdrawals to pay for what you need to pay for, and at some point you could take so much out that it negatively affects your long-term planning. So the first problem is inflation. So the second thing that can mess you up and cause your TSP and your assets to not be enough would be stock market crashes. Now, if we look back at the C fund, let's just assume you had all of your money in the C fund. And I know a lot of you would say, well, that's crazy, I would never do that. But let's look back at a 10-year period from 1999 to 2008. This 10-year period, let's assume in our example, you've got a $500,000 TSP, and that's when you retired. Now the $500,000 is in the C fund. So if you look here, in 1999, you had $500,000. In 2000, you lost 9%. Well, that kind of stinks. But then if you look in 2001, you lost about 12%. That also stinks. 2002, you would have lost 22%. So there were 3 years in a row of negative numbers. Then you have several positive years, 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, several positive years, and then 2008, you're gonna lose 37%. So if you look at this chart, the bar chart would be your TSP amount. So you see in 1999, you had $500,000. You see you have 3 years in a row of losing. It starts to build back. And yes, by 2007, you have more money than you started with. But then when you lose the 37% of 2008, you see your number is down under 400,000. So you started with 500,000. 10 years later, you have less than 400,000. That's not good, and that can mess up your retirement where your TSP might not always be enough. Now, just to make matters worse, let's say that you were taking withdrawals. So a lot of time in the financial planning world, we talk about a 4% withdrawal ratio. If you withdraw 4% from your money, it'll last 25 years if you never earn a dime. So like if you can earn anything, it lasts forever. Well, what would it look like during this 10-year period? So 1999, you start off with 500,000. It loses the 9% and you take out 4% to help support your lifestyle. Now, again, you lose some more, you take out another 4%. So as you can see, all of these numbers are going to be worse than before because you're taking withdrawals. Now, the 4% withdrawal would be based off of your new balance, so you would be taking out less because your balance is less. But you can see at the end of the 10 years, at the end of 2008, you got $248,000 left. You started off with 500. You took out 4% a year, which sounds like a reasonable amount and should be fine. It wasn't fine. Why is it not fine? Because you had 4 really bad negative years. Keep this in mind with statistics and math. Let's say you have a $1,000 balance, you lose 50%, you go to $500. Now you gain 50%, you go to $750. So some people say, I lost 50%, I gained 50%. Hey, I've averaged zero. You haven't averaged zero. Your $1,000 is not $1,000, it's only $750 because your losses hurt you more than your gains help you. So during this 10-year period, when you have 4 negative years, it really hurts you. And then if you need to take withdrawals at the same time, it can really mess you up. So you're going to want to find an investment strategy that can offset this because 100% G fund doesn't earn enough. Let's just be honest, it doesn't earn enough. You can't keep up with inflation, keep up with things if you're only averaging 1% a year so far this year, and I think 0.97% last year. So even if you didn't have 100% in the C fund, let's say you had half your money in the C fund, this is how bad it would have been during that 10-year period. There needs to be a better way to figure out what to do there because that alone can mess up your retirement and it can cause your TSP that looks like enough today to not always be enough. The next issue that can mess up your TSP where it is not always enough would be increased taxes. If you look here, increased taxes will affect your pension. You won't get as much pension because of taxes. You won't get as much Social Security because of taxes, and your withdrawals from TSP and IRA, you won't get as much. So if you look here, 100% of the money that you're supposed to be getting, let's just say 25% of it goes for taxes. Maybe it's 20% federal, 5% state, but you get to spend 75% of the money, 25% goes to taxes. Now, if taxes go up, let's say now it's not 25%, it's 35%. Well, guess what? Your portion goes down. You're no longer spending 75% of the money that's yours, you're only spending 65%. That can cause you to run out of money faster because what you thought was your money, it turns out it wasn't your money. If you have traditional money in your TSP and you get the statement and you look at the total and say, look at me, look at the money I have, you are mistaken. When you look at your TSP balance, some of it is yours, some of it is the government's. You need to go ahead and just earmark, you know what, that chunk is not mine, it's the government's. Because it's really not yours, and you'll find out when you go to spend it. Now the dilemma is if taxes increase, that means the government's portion increases, and guess what? It's a zero-sum game, which means your portion goes down. So if you have a lot of traditional money and tax rates increase, your pension's taxed more, Social Security's taxed more, and your assets are taxed more, it can cause you to run out of money faster, and that may be a reason why your TSP, it seems like enough now, that it may not always be enough. So another problem that can mess up your TSP, your assets where it's not enough, is increased expenses. Now a lot of people think, well, I'm only going to spend a certain amount and I can control my expenses and it's fine. And a lot of times you can as far as healthcare goes because most people are retiring with the FEHB, and that's good. And if you add Medicare to it, usually, it covers everything. Now you will have the premium for FEHB and you'll have the premium for Medicare, but usually there's not surprises on, surgery costs and out-of-pocket expenses. But if you need long-term care and suddenly you have to start spending $8,000 a month on long-term care, that can be a big deal. It can cause you to run down your assets faster. So whatever the reason for your increased expenses, just assume that suddenly you've got a lot more expenses than you thought. That will cause you to pull more money out of your TSP and IRA than you thought to make up for it, and then that can cause you to run it out faster. So what seemed like enough under certain scenarios, I'm only going to be spending this much, it works. Suddenly I'm going to be spending this much, okay, it doesn't work. You need to figure out what expenses could cause this to mess up. But whatever the reason, if your expenses suddenly are a lot more than you think, that can cause you to run out of money faster, and it may cause your TSP to not be enough. We need to think through this stuff in advance, plan ways to cover all the different scenarios that we can think of for increased expenses to make sure that this doesn't mess up your retirement. Now, the last reason that can cause you to not have enough and your TSP to not always be enough would be investment returns. Now, in the TSP, you're kind of limited. You've got the G and the F on the conservative side. You've got the C, S, and I on the aggressive side. And you've got L funds, which are just a predetermined mix of those funds. Now, we went through earlier how if you're 100% C fund, how, at least during that 10-year period of the dot-com crash and the financial crisis, it didn't work and your returns were really negative, and that messes you up. So what a lot of people do then is, I guess I got to have a lot of G fund. Well, the G fund has a long-term average of about 2%. I think so far in 2021, it's 1.12%. And last year, 2020, it was 0.97. So the returns are really low. So if you get too conservative, move too much money to the G fund, you won't earn enough. But in the TSP, that's really the only way to make the TSP more conservative is you got to start pushing money to the G fund. So on the outside, if you move your money out of the TSP and move it into an IRA, there are other investment options out there. There are some options that can't lose. Your money can't go down based on the stock market, but there's potential to earn more. There's some investments where you're in the stock market, but there's a limit to what you can lose so that you can partake in the good times, but you're only going to lose a certain amount during the bad times. And you can look and make sure if I lose that, I'm still okay. But if you have 3 negative years in a row like the dot-com crash, and then you lose about half your money in 08, that does not work. So we got to make sure you're earning a reasonable amount for the amount of risk that you're taking. And it seems like in the TSP, the C fund and the S fund as of late have been great, but you are taking a lot of risk, and it shows up in the dot-com crash and the 2008 crash. It was really risky. But going to the G fund doesn't usually help either because it doesn't keep up with inflation. So low investment returns make a difference. You want to find the right investments that suit your planning needs, that suit your risk tolerance. Make sure you're not taking too much risk, but we need to make sure that they're going to earn enough that this is not the reason your TSP is enough. Now, we've gone through 5 examples of things that could mess up your TSP. Now, what would really mess it up is if pieces of all 5 of them happened. And this, in reality, is probably what would happen to mess somebody up. Inflation goes up. Well, guess what? We are there. Currently, inflation is a lot higher than it's ever been in a long time. So the first part we can check that yes, that is happening right now. The second one, stock market crash. It hasn't crashed yet, but during COVID, it went down a lot. And it seems to be more volatile than ever, and it seems to swing up a lot, and it swings down a lot. So if we have inflation and a stock market crash, it's not going to be good. What about increased taxes? Well, we don't need to get into everybody's political persuasion, but it does seem like right now, in the current environment, taxes could go up. As long as there's divided government, maybe they won't go up. But if the government ever gets all 3 branches in one party, usually taxes change. I think under Obama, when he had all 3, taxes went up. Under Trump, when he had all 3, taxes went down. So could taxes go up in the future? Yes, they could. So that could play its role in making your TSP not be enough. Next up, increased expenses. Could that happen to you? It could. Well, what if the increased expenses happened also with the taxes going up, also with inflation, and a stock market crash? That could happen. If that happens, your returns may be low. And so all 5 of these conceivably could happen over the next 20 years during your retirement. What is your current plan to fix that? What is your current plan to offset that? So if these 5 things happen, your plan still works. Do you have that worked out? Do you have contingency plans? This is something that you may want to look into. So here are some action items that you can do. The first off, get a financial plan done. If you need help with this type of stuff, please reach out to retireinstitute.com. They will get you in touch with somebody that can help you. But let's put in your income, your Social Security, your spouse's information, your assets. Let's put in your expenses. Do you have any goals? Do you have any, I want to spend $10,000 a year to travel for the first number of years. Let's try to put in all the expenses that we know about and make sure that you have enough. Let's go through different scenarios and test your plan against these issues. What if one of the spouses, either you or your spouse, dies first? Is the other person okay? Let's go ahead and plan for the stock market to be really bad and you not have very good returns. Are you still okay? Let's plan on your increased expenses going up. Are you okay? Let's plan on taxes going up. Are you okay? Is there anything you can do between now and then to offset some of those risks? Well, on the tax side there is, and it's called Roth converting. And it's something that TSP does not let you do. But there are things you can be working on now to not have that tax risk be such a bad risk for you. The other thing you can look at is your investment selection. In the TSP, it's limited. Outside of the TSP, it is not limited, and there are investment selections out there that can help suit any of the issues that your plan may have. If you need to earn more, we need to find a more conservative way for you to try to earn more. If you want to be super safe with it and not risk the money very much, there are ways where you can still try to earn something reasonable doing that. There are more options on the outside and you want to look into that. So your action items: get a financial plan done. Test your plan against these different issues to make sure your plan is still okay, and then make sure the investment selections you have suit the plan that you're wanting to put together. If you want help with these action items, please reach out to retireinstitute.com. Call the number on your screen. I'd love to talk with you to help go over some of these numbers with you. Happy planning, and hopefully your TSP will always be enough. My name is Mel Stubbs. I will talk to you next time.